Welcome, welcome everyone to the Personal Statement Workshop. For those of you who are on the phone, it looks like we might have some people who are on the phone, or for those of you who are watching the video, and for those of you who are on the computer, we are going to start out with a writing exercise. So if you can just take a second to grab paper and pencil. If you don't have paper and pencil handy and you have your computer, that works fine as well. But we are going to do several writing exercises. If you're following this at home, on your, using the recording, I'm going to pause the recording during the writing periods. I still recommend that you do the full writing as opposed to skipping over it and just moving on to the next piece. So this workshop is really to get you started thinking about your personal statement and what you're going to write for your personal statement for your application. We have this in November because it does take a while to put together a really good personal statement, and we want to make sure that you take the time that you need to really begin, brainstorm, refine, and put together all the drafts that you need to have a really quality personal statement that shows who you are as an individual. So we're going to start with a series of brainstorming exercises, many of which may go longer than you expect they would, but we have them go longer for a reason, and that is a lot of the time the thing that you think of in that last minute or so might actually be the thing that you're like, oh, actually, that's not a bad thing to put in there. So we're going to start with just a general brainstorming exercise. This is going to be a brainstorming exercise where you just put a lot of stuff on paper. And what you're going to do is you're just on your paper, or if you don't have paper, on your laptop, write down things that you're most proud of. And that can be in any way, shape, or form. It can be academic, it can be experiential, it can be nothing related to medicine, it can be nothing career related, it can be something about a club that you were in, or it can be something from before you were in college as well. In general, you don't put activities from before college, but you may put things that you've accomplished before college in your personal statement. So these are things that you're like, wow, I can't believe I did that, or wow, I can't believe I overcame that. Wow, that was a really difficult challenge, and I'm so impressed with myself that I actually overcame it and achieved a goal. So any variety of things. We're not going to share this. You're not going to have to read it out loud. This is not the time to be modest. So we're going to just take until 12:14, and you're just going to spend the time writing things down. Just write a list of all the things that you feel like, okay, these are things that I accomplished. For folks who are watching the video, I'm going to pause the recording. Really try and stick with this for 10 minutes as opposed to just getting up and, getting a snack or something. You really want to try and stick it out and just keep writing free form for the next 10 minutes. So I'm going to pause and we'll come back in 10 minutes and we'll move on to the next exercise. Okay, everybody. Hopefully that wasn't too long and painful. I know that's kind of a difficult exercise given the length of time we give you. But we're going to move on to the next part of our exercise right now. So the next thing that we're going to do with the information that you put down is we're going to put all of that information into a concept map. So you want to look through everything that you wrote down, circle the most important themes, label and kind of connect and label common themes, and then label the lines to just kind of think about, okay, how do these two concepts or related concepts connect? So you're going to put together a general concept map, which may look like a little bit of a gooey mess, but we're going to spend 5 minutes just thinking about what are some common themes, what are the central themes, so what do you think are the most important themes? Remember, these are the most important themes from your list of accomplishments as relate to your admission to your planned medical career. So it's not just what's most central to who you are, but what's most central to who you are in terms of the career that you're aspiring for. So we're going to spend 5 minutes doing this. So we're going to do this until 12:20. All right, and then we'll start up again. We'll have a couple more exercises still after this. So map things out and just circle those concepts, connect themes, and label them. Okay, so now we're going to have one more, now we're going to have one more section on this, and that is we're going to analyze those themes that we put together. So you want to look at the concept map that you've put together and think about, okay, what are the major themes? And from that, do you feel like you could build a personal statement around one of those themes? When thinking about a personal statement, you want your personal statement to show who you are, why you want to be a doctor, of the type of doctor that you want to be, and how you're qualified to be a doctor. And by how you're qualified, I mean what kind of research, clinical, service, leadership experiences have you had that make you qualified to go into medicine. Obviously, you're not already a physician, so you're not qualified in that way. But how have the experiences that you've had set you up in a position that you're ready to enter medical school? And then more important than that, to be a physician in the future. So take about, again, 5 minutes and just think about what are the major themes, and does one theme stand out as best in a way that will allow you to kind of explore, to touch on all that you want to touch on for your admissions essay. So we're going to stop this at 12:26. Okay. Okay. So hopefully that gave you sort of a concept map with some ideas of, these are some major themes that I feel like I might be interested in addressing in my personal statement. We have one more exercise that we're going to do. This one is a little bit unrelated to the previous three. Your personal statement really is your one opportunity to speak directly to admissions. They just give you a blank sheet of paper, and you have the opportunity to make of that what you want to. So you got to figure it's going to take them about 5 minutes to read your personal statement. For MD programs, that they have the longest personal statement. It's 5,300 characters. That includes spaces, so it's about a page and a half. For DO and dental programs, it's a little bit shorter. It's about 4,700 characters, which is more like a page. So it's not a whole lot of space. It is like you're sitting down with somebody for 5 minutes and telling them a little bit about your life. So if you can imagine that you had 5 minutes to talk directly to admissions, imagine that there's nobody else in the room, just you and an admissions person. What things do you feel like you would want to say? What things do you feel like, oh, I would not want them to leave the room without learning this information about me? So we're going to spend another 5 minutes and just brainstorm things like, what do you feel like are the essential things that somebody should really know about you in order to really get who you are? So we're going to finish this at 12:33, and at that time we'll go through just another a more traditional, typical presentation. All right, well, hopefully that gave you some ideas of things to think about in a starting point for your personal statement. We're going to go to sort of the traditional PowerPoint presentation and talk a little bit more about what the schools are looking for, why you're writing your personal statement, how to think about the personal statement. So a personal statement has really one goal, and that is to make the reader want to get to know you better. How do they do that? They invite you in for an interview. So a personal statement puts you into context. It helps them to understand, this person is different from another person in X, Y, and Z way. We think that they're kind of interesting. We think that they would be a good fit for our school, right? Very few people are accepted solely because of their personal statement. Rather, it helps to put you into context, and it helps to paint a picture of who you are as an individual so that the schools can really understand, okay, this is who this applicant is. This is some interesting things about this applicant beyond what I've read about, okay, this is what I did in the lab and this is what I did for my community service. Things that a personal statement should not do. It should not be generic. It's meant to be, personal, as the name says. So you really want to think about, when I write this personal statement, it should be my experience in a way that nobody else would be able to write. So my roommate wouldn't be able to write this, my sister, my brother, my parents wouldn't be able to write this statement. It should be my story in a way that nobody else could tell this story. It shouldn't include quotes. I think that the medical schools have read every quote by Gandhi and by Martin Luther King that they could ever possibly want to read or need to read. If you have a quote that you're really, really connected to and you really want to put in your personal statement in, you can put it in your personal statement draft and, do some writing around that. But by the time you submit it, take it out and just, put your own words in there in its place. You really want to focus on the positive, not the negative. So, a lot of people have become interested in medicine because of something that happened in their life, and that something in their life may have been really hard. And that's certainly something that you may want to include in your personal statement, but you want to include that in a way that's not, poor me, or, oh, my life is so difficult. They're not going to accept you into medical school because your life was difficult. They're going to accept you, or one thing that they're going to look at when they think about accepting you is you're resilient, you overcome challenges, you've accomplished a lot already, and you're somebody who is really a striver who doesn't quit. And those are things that you demonstrate through a difficult story, right? So when you're talking about a story or a hardship, a medical challenge that you faced, something difficult that's happened in your life, obviously you kind of have to relay the story, but you're relaying that story to talk about the ways that you persevered and you became who you are because of that challenge. So you really want to be mindful of the focus that you put on that when you're talking about it. Now, in terms of trying to cover everything about who you are, you're not going to be able to. So likely you've written down a lot of things in the brainstorming that you just did that you're really not going to be able to talk about in your personal statement. You're complicated people, complex people. You've done a lot in your life already, and so you're not going to be able to talk about every single piece of it. You really have to make some decisions about what is most important for this current goal, which is to be accepted into your medical program. So you really do have to make some difficult choices. Don't try and do too much in your personal statement, because it gets to be overwhelming and who you are doesn't shine through as much. Be careful about any statement that could be open to misinterpretation. So you really want to be clear about what you're saying. You don't want to come across as criticizing the health professions. You don't want to come across as criticizing other people. You don't want people to be unclear about your interest in medicine. So sometimes people maybe questioned if do I want to be a doctor? Do I not want to be a doctor? And through their experiences and maybe shadowing, through time they spend on co-op, they realize, yes, this is exactly what I want to do. Don't start out your personal statement by saying, I didn't think I wanted to be a doctor, because that could be open to misinterpretation, and they could think, oh, well, if you don't want to be a doctor, we probably don't want to accept you. Be careful when you talk about how amazing you are. You don't want to come across as being arrogant. Schools don't want to accept arrogant students. They really want people who feel humble, who are going to come with an open mindset, thinking, I have a lot to learn, and who are going to be really studying a lot. I've definitely heard of students not being accepted because their application came across as too arrogant. So you really want to be focused on coming across not as, you know, you don't want to come across as like too modest, but you want to come across as confident, but try not to use I, for example, too much. Try not to sound like, oh, well, the healthcare system is broken and I am going to fix it, for example. So, really note the tone of what you're talking about. And then finally, don't leave the ultimate question unanswered. The ultimate question is, why do you want to do this? Why do you want to be a doctor, a dentist, a veterinarian, an optometrist, a podiatrist? When they finish your personal statement, they should know why you're applying to their program. If they don't know, your personal statement has not done its job. Sensitive information. So a lot of applicants do have some sort of sensitive information that's a part of their story. And the question is, should you include it in your personal statement? You really want to ask yourself, is this sensitive information a part of your journey? Have you grown because of it? Has it impacted the kind of doctor you'll be? And how might it be received by your different readers? So you don't want to share sensitive information just to share it, to kind of get um, to hope that schools will think, oh, this applicant grew up without a lot of resources. They grew up in an underserved community. Maybe they came from a single parent household and they didn't have a lot of money. You don't necessarily want to share that just for sort of the, pity vote, I guess. But if that's a part of your story, if you feel like, well, this is part of what makes me interested in this career, then certainly that's something that you can feel like it's definitely okay to share. Similarly, if you've had some sort of medical condition, and you feel like, well, this is really a part of my story, and this is part of why I'm interested in medical school, or the program that you're applying to, it's certainly fine to share that. But, if you had your appendix out when you were 6, is that really part of your story and part of your journey, or did you just have your appendix out? Sometimes it is part of your story. Sometimes it's just something that happened in your life. So you really want to kind of think about that. And finally, you do want to think about how it will be received by your readers. You have to assume that whoever reads your personal statement is going to be different than you. And so you really want to think about how you share that information, realizing that everybody is going to be different and everybody's going to have different perceptions. Obviously, again, a personal statement should be personal. It should tell the admissions committee who you are, put your application in the context of your life so that the admissions folks can get a sense of, okay, this is where this person came from. It should be organized around a central theme. So hopefully you found one or something that you're kind of thinking about from the exercises earlier. It should be easy to read. It should be well written. It should have direct, active, clear language, and absolutely it should be completely free of errors, which means that you should definitely have somebody proofread it, and not just one person, but several people. You really want to be starting now. We have this workshop in November for a reason. I think the reason that we have it now is because you may want to spend Thanksgiving when you're all sitting around the Thanksgiving table. You might just want to be like, hey, so I'm writing my personal statement. What do you guys think are things that are central to who I am and why I want to be a doctor that I should put in my personal statement? It turns out that maybe not everybody wants to talk about that at Thanksgiving dinner, but think about having that conversation at Thanksgiving dinner. Is that something that your family would be able to contribute or your friends would be able to contribute to? Because you're presumably going to be with the people who know you best. Sometimes people are a little too modest when they start thinking about their own personal statement, and it may be useful to have others' feedback. You're most likely going to need to write a whole lot of additional essays for your secondary apps. So really put together a writing schedule, sit down and just do a little brainstorming, do some writing, do some free writing about who you are, why you want to be a doctor, things that you've accomplished. Just spend, an hour a day for a little while doing some writing, brainstorm, analyze, organize the information. Anything that you do now that doesn't make it into your personal statement may make really good secondary essays. So if you write something and you're like, oh, this isn't going to work for a personal statement, don't throw it away. Hold on to it and see, is this something that's going to work in the future for a secondary? Errors. Errors are really not a good thing to have in your personal statement. They kind of say, oh, I couldn't be bothered to put this together correctly. Now, if you wind up with one typo in your personal statement, it doesn't mean you're not going to get into the program of your choice. It happens. But you really want to try not to have errors. Spelling and grammar check are never enough. Read it out loud. Proofread it, ask other people to proofread it, use the Writing Center on campus. It's a good idea to have somebody who is a really good proofreader who looks over all of your things that you've written. So your personal statement, all of your descriptions of your experiences, and then your secondaries. If you have one person who's really good at proofreading, read over everything in the end. That's a great plan. Just in case that person's sort of voice comes through, at least it's the same voice that comes through every time. Once you submit your application, you can't change that stuff. So if you submit it with an error, it's just going to be there haunting you. So feedback is the last thing that we want to talk about here. It's really essential that you get feedback on your personal statement. Your personal statement isn't something that you write in isolation. So you really want multiple people to read the personal statement, your family, your parents, your friends. So people who are close to you, have them read it and ask them, is this who I am? Do you feel like this accurately represents me? Is this, how you think I should portray myself to the admissions committee? Also, have people who don't know you read it and just kind of say, what did you learn about me? Do you feel like this is somebody who should be going to a medical program, who should be becoming a doctor? And then, of course, that doctor, the physician, the dentist, the optometrist, podiatrist, who has been your mentor, who's writing your letter of recommendation, you definitely want to ask them if they would read it over and give them the feedback. Also, research PIs are really good. Obviously, they haven't necessarily applied to medical programs, but they have applied to graduate programs. One exercise that can be really useful is have somebody read over the statement and just write 2 or 3 words next to each paragraph that they think, okay, this paragraph, here's a few words that I think summarizes this paragraph for each of your paragraphs. And then when they've done that, read those words together and think, is this how I want to portray myself? Are these words that they've put down? You'll probably have like 4 or 5 paragraphs. So, do these 10 to 15 words summarize how I want to portray myself to the admissions committee? And if they don't, do some revising. You'll want to send that personal statement out to a bunch of people. Advanced writing professors are also really good resources as well, actually. So you'll want to send that out to a bunch of different people. You'll get a lot of different feedback. Some of it will conflict. You're definitely free to send it to me as well. We don't like to read 20 copies of your personal statement because in the end, at the committee letter interview, we will also give you feedback on your personal statement. And if I've read your personal statement 20 times already, I don't read it sort of with that fresh, like new eyes that I would be looking at it with if it was the second or third time. And in that regard, it's not as an admissions person would read it, with sort of new eyes. So I kind of like to read them in the same way that an admissions person would, just to get, okay, what sense do I get from this personal statement? And does this match with the person who I just did a committee letter interview with? At the end of the day, it's your personal statement. You get to decide what goes in and what doesn't go in. And so you definitely should be the last person that says, okay, I'm going to choose this piece of advice from this person and this piece from this person and this piece from this person, because you are going to get a lot of conflicting advice about it. So definitely you really want to think about, spending some time on it now, doing some brainstorming, putting something together, putting it away, so not working on it for a little while, pulling it back out, doing more revisions, then sending it out for feedback, um, editing that feedback, and then, again, putting it away and not looking at it again. When you put it away for a while and you pull it out again, you may notice different things about it. You may think, well, actually, the second paragraph that I thought was amazing really isn't that amazing. Or actually, this piece kind of flows really well together. The last paragraph can sometimes be really hard, and sometimes you may need to kind of let everything settle and simmer before you put that last paragraph on there. Last paragraph, instead of being a conclusion like in a traditional essay, kind of should talk about, okay, this is where I hope to go forward from here. This is why I'm hoping to go forward into medical school, into dental school. So it is a little bit tricky putting that last paragraph on there, particularly before the other paragraphs are done. Like I said, if you do want feedback from me, definitely feel free to email me and just to be like, hey, do you think I'm on the right track? And I'm happy to kind of give you some feedback about that. If you are going to set up an appointment with me to talk about it, if you can email me your personal statement first, just so I can read it before you come, that's usually helpful. So that is the end of the formal presentation. I'm just going to open it up now to questions. Does anybody have questions? I've muted all the microphones, so if you have questions, please just type them in the chat box and I'll read them out loud and answer any questions you may have. Okay, well, I'm going to stop the recording, and it looks like we might have a question here. Is the AMCAS application just a blank question? Yes, the MD application, unless they've changed it, is just a blank sheet of paper. It's just 5,200 characters, including spaces. What do you want to tell us? So it can be anything that you want to tell them. There's no prompt at all. So the medical school and the dental schools are like that, no prompts at all. The veterinary schools now do have prompts, but there's no prompt whatsoever. It's whatever you want to share. Okay, so thank you everybody who's listening, and for folks who are watching the recording. Definitely let me know if you have questions in the future, and I look forward to seeing you at our next presentation, which will be about letters of recommendation.